How do you think this might be addressed tonight, whether the voters in Wisconsin stand up and ask questions about it, whether Anderson asks questions about it? Clearly, they all have strong views.
That's a great question, Wolf, and I think it's clear that because it has become such a story, Donald Trump will have to address it, whether it comes from the audience or whether it comes from Anderson Cooper. And I think Trump has kind of given us a preview that he plans to sort of say that Michelle Fields grabbed him first and that she overblew this incident and is kind of overplaying her hand. But I think the challenge for Trump is whether he can then pivot and get to more of the issues that he wants to talk about that might matter to Wisconsin voters, and whether he can sort of move past this and prove to voters that this is not emblematic of how he runs his campaign, that this is not an indication that he or his campaign manager or his campaign generally have some kind of problem with women. This is a narrative that Donald Trump has tried to beat back, this sort of unfavorability we've seen among women voters generally, and that's something that people in Wisconsin say could hurt him here. So I think his goal going into tonight has got to be to move beyond this narrative and to sort of make his case to Wisconsin voters so that he can try to come out on top of Ted Cruz here.
Sarah Murray on the scene for us at the Republican Presidential Town Hall that will start at 8 p.m. Eastern later tonight. Sarah, thanks very much. Joining us now in the Situation Room, one of Donald Trump's key supporters, Scotty Nell Hughes of U.S. Radio Network. Scotty, thanks very much for joining us. How big of a problem is this charge against Corey Lewandowski for the Trump campaign?
Well, I think at first, when we first heard this broke a few hours ago, definitely there was a lot to digest. And I think the initial response, it would have just been better if Corey would have initially come out and just said, "I'm sorry," in a tweet, instead of causing this firestorm and this tit-tat battle that's gone back and forth between him and Michelle Fields. Now that we've had a few hours to actually review what the police have filed against him, there are some inconsistencies that are starting to come out, Wolf. You know, the Daily Mail has actually just did a story where they're posting that an anonymous member of Trump's Secret Service campaign is saying, details saying that Fields touched Trump twice and was warned not to by agents to stop. And then Lewandowski had to step in. She crossed in between agents and our protectee after being told not to. If that turns out to be true right there, that might back up why Corey decided to step in. Also, you want to look at they're looking at some inconsistencies of the photos. If you look at the video you just played, it shows that her shirt is being pulled more like the top of her shirt, which would suggest that she was pulled on the top part of her arm. Yet the picture she tweeted out a few days later was because on her wrist, was on her forearm. So there are some questions that still are going to need to be out there, but unfortunately those people that are anti-Mr. Trump have already made Corey be guilty, and that whole idea of being innocent until proven guilty seems to be out the window.
But if this reporter, Michelle Fields, Scotty, was in fact on two occasions, you say, reaching out and inappropriately touching Donald Trump, and she had been warned, and we don't know if this is true, but she had been warned by the Secret Service agents on the scene, don't do that. Isn't it their job to prevent her from touching a presidential candidate, not the job of a campaign manager?
Well, you have to wonder then why, if you sit there and you look in that video, Corey's reaching across probably what I assume is a Secret Service agent. If Miss Fields was going to be assaulted, if she was going to be in some sort of fear of trouble, why wouldn't that Secret Service agent step in to protect her as much as Mr. Trump or Corey from that happening? You had hundreds of people in that room, Wolf. We did not get video for at least 24 to 48 hours of this event happening. If she was in so much, and let me say this, Michelle Fields is a great reporter. She is definitely one that pushes. She is definitely a very, very aggressive reporter and does a great job at it. If she was pushing, if she was actually in fear and actually going to her life was in turmoil or in danger, don't you think somebody else would have stepped in and said, you know what, that's not right what just happened? There was enough men and women both standing around that should have said something if it was that dramatic of an episode, enough to warrant a charge. Now, Wolf, let me say this. Last year in 2013, 23,000 cases were reported of significant injury due to assault at work. I wonder if those 23,000, how many of those were filed police reports and how many of them were just because of a few bruises on the job?
All right, let's listen to Donald Trump just moments ago aboard his plane. He was answering reporters' questions. He said this about the bruises.
But I think when people see that tape and they take a look at that tape and they take a look at her initial statement before she knew she was on tape, take a look at that. You have to see it. You take a look at her initial statement. It sounded like she got thrown out of a building. You take a look at that, and then, excuse me?
She did get bruises on her arm.
I don't know if there were bruises from that. Why? Who said there were bruises from that? How do you know those bruises weren't there before?
That's what the police
I don't know what the police said. How do you know those bruises weren't there before? I'm not a lawyer.
You heard what he said. He's not a lawyer. How do you know those bruises were from when Lewandowski grabbed or touched her arm? Your reaction?
We don't know either way, but in this case, I do know both people involved. And just like, in the previous hour, there was a great interview with Amanda Carpenter, who I respect so much, who brought the idea, the fact that, this is not just slandering me. This is not politics. You're slandering my family. I am a wife. I have children. This whole thing has gotten so dirty. The same thing can also be said for Corey. Corey is an amazing father of 4 children and an amazing devoted husband if you go back and you actually get to know him, a man of faith. So, that just shows how sad this whole political campaign has gone. Is that it's not just going after the candidates. We're now trying to attempt to smear families and destroy families, and that is not the Republican Party I belong to. And I would really hope that this might be the last incident in both candidates. And it starts at the top, both Senator Cruz and Mr. Trump, to say, you know what, let's put this aside. Let's go back to focusing on issues, because it's not just about us. It's not only just talking about us. We're destroying families right now that are going to not only affect the people, but their children for generations to come. We
showed the pictures of the bruises on her arm that she herself had tweeted after the incident. There they are once again. She says those were done by Corey Lewandowski. He originally insisted he never even touched her. He in fact tweeted at Michelle Fields, "You are totally delusional. I never touched you. As a matter of fact, I have never even met you." Clearly the video shows he did in fact touch her, right?
I don't know what there was definitely there were very close proximity, obviously, until you zoom in. But either way, like I said, as we started this off, Wolf, I wish that Corey would have started off by saying, you know what, whether or not it happened, it's unfortunate. I apologize if I did that. In this case, I think apology would have gone a very, very long way. Unfortunately, though, I know apologies and team is probably a very unapologetic administration don't necessarily resonate well within the Trump campaign, whether they're warranted or not.
All right, Scotty, stand by. We have more to discuss, more information coming in. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. We're standing by for a Donald Trump rally in Janesville, Wisconsin. You're looking at live pictures over there. Trump's campaign is under fire tonight after a top aide was charged with misdemeanor battery. Trump is defending his campaign manager, telling him to never settle the charge. We're talking about Corey Lewandowski. We're back with Donald Trump supporter Scotty Nell Hughes as we follow the hour's breaking news. Scotty, this is not the first time, as you well know, that Corey Lewandowski has faced accusations of being overly aggressive. Also in March, after this first incident, Lewandowski was caught on camera appearing to grab a protester by his collar during a rally in Tucson, Arizona. We're showing the viewers some pictures. We will show the viewers some video of that in a moment. There it is right there. I guess the bottom line question is Lewandowski now a liability for Trump?
Well, not about a liability, but let's point this out that, yes, prior to Secret Service coming on, Lewandowski was a part of what they considered to be the body men, the people that helped secure Mr. Trump going from place to place. And he does, I'll be the first to say, he definitely has a little bit of a hot head sometimes. But that's because, look what his background was. He was a state trooper in New Hampshire. He does have some law enforcement training. And I think once you have that kind of training, it's hard to put that away. That's what I think makes this so interesting and why this is so controversial, Wolf, is because now he is a campaign director. This is not something traditionally you see amongst the campaigns, is the campaign directors actually out in the crowd, talking with the people, interacting with the people, whether positively or negatively. Normally they're in the back, but that just goes along with the whole idea of the Trump campaign. It's been very non-traditional. It hasn't followed the same stereotypes and the same points that every other presidential campaign has. And there's good and there's bad with that. And in this case, I think Corey, after this is going to change how much the media can be a part of any presidential campaign going forward. I guarantee the next time that Mr. Trump decides that he's just going to do a casual walkthrough, which could be considered a nightmare for most Secret Service agents, a casual walkthrough after a media press avail to go to the end and just to say hi to folks, I guarantee next time he probably will second guess that, and I'd be afraid that there might not be as much availability to the press after events like this.
As you know, Senator Ted Cruz and Governor John Kasich, they both reacted to the charge against Lewandowski today. Listen to this.
It's a very sad development, and this is the consequence of the culture of the Trump campaign, the abusive culture. When you have a campaign that is built on personal insults, on attacks, and now physical violence, that has no place in a political campaign. It has no place in our democracy.
I don't know this guy. I don't know exactly what happened. My understanding is that the report is that he grabbed somebody, and that's frankly totally and completely inappropriate. It could have been one of my daughters, for that matter. Look, I think I've said what I have to say, which is if it was me, If I was in this circumstance, I would take some sort of action, either suspension or firing.
Go ahead, your response.
Of course, this is just another glob of mud that they can throw at the candidate, the front runner, and hope that they can continue to smear him. I have to ask a question, though. If this person's name, instead of being Michelle Fields, was Mitch Fields, do you think that this would be such an issue? Do you think that there would be police reports following? Is it just because there's supposedly this smear against Mr. Trump as being anti-woman or having an issue with women? Which, when you actually look at his facts, the fact that he does have more women at the top of his organizations, the more he had the first female project manager build his skyscraper here in New York, and that we've all seen what he has done to glorify his own daughter within the business world, as well deserved. I think that right there, the actions speak louder than words that these other guys are trying to use against him.
Having said all that, the police report, the charge, which was filed today in Jupiter, Florida, concluded with these words, and I'll just read them to you, Scotty. Based on the above described investigation, probable cause exists to charge Corey Lewandowski, then they cite his date of birth, with one count of simple battery in that he did intentionally touch Michelle Fields, her date of birth, against the will of Michelle Fields. That's not, that's the police making that accusation, that charge. I'll give you the final word.
And that's a very simple accusation to make right there. And of course, I think it's obvious. She obviously would not want him to pull her away from Mr. Trump when asking a question. The question is, though, was she supposed to be there in the first place? Should she have been there pushing Mr. Trump, or she'd already been warned, please stay away, this is not the time, or we're trying to get him out? You know, actions have consequences, and so it kind of depends on, we'll find that all out in court.
Scotty Hughes, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.
And please be sure to watch